All right, you had an assignment to do for today, which is to read a short article about the Odyssey and to answer some questions. So I'd like to collect that from you. And then we're going to begin looking at the ancient Olympics. We're going to do something a little differently today because we ran out of time yesterday in order for you to do research on the Olympics, and that is we're going to try to do it as we go. So everybody have their Chromebook ready, and we'll first try everybody looking for something, and then if that doesn't work, we'll maybe assign some individual events. So I believe in your packet of materials there is a page that has different Olympic events. Does everybody find that? All right. And I'm not sure if I have them in the same order or not. Let's begin with this. This slide shows, and by the way, most of these pictures are found on bases, which we'll get to the reason for that. This is a pre-game ceremony in which a pig is formally slaughtered as a sacrifice. So that's how they began the games. And then the athletes swore that they had trained hard for 10 months. All right, now the next thing we'll look up is, and we give applause to these guys, look up discus. See what you can find out about discus. By the way, that opening ceremony, there will be a relay race in order to see which group of runners could get there first to light the altar to the god Zeus. They ran with lighted torches, and if you've ever watched the Olympics, you know that they do that today. They run with lighted torches. Usually it's not teams competing against one another, it's one person at a time, but then finally someone is given the honor of lighting the altar, basically, that's there. Okay, anybody find anything about the discus? Let's go ahead and share. Anybody? What'd you find, Dan?
It was originally made of stone, and then later changed to bronze or iron.
Okay. That's interesting.
There was like a specific method of throwing that they used. So like a right-handed thrower would bring his left foot forward and shift his weight to his right foot, and then he would swing the discus a few times back and forth, and then he would turn his body with the movement of the swing, and then he moves his weight onto his left foot and threw it.
Okay, so it sounds similar to the way we throw it today. Have any of you ever thrown a discus? Okay, you've watched it on television, I'm sure. You know, you go that back and forth and then spin around and then come off the left foot and you throw it out there. And here's the image of a discus thrower on a base. The stone discs, it says here, weigh about 15 pounds. The metal ones from 3 to 9 pounds. All right, anybody find anything else about discus? All right, let's move to Boxing. Let's find boxing. Okay, anyone find anything yet? Okay, Matt, what'd you find?
That they train the same way they do today with the ball that they punch.
Okay. Yes, Stephen?
There is no weight classification and no time limit.
No weight classifications. So all the men fought whatever weight anybody else was, and the boys fought against anybody that was whatever weight. And what was the second thing? No time. So there were no rounds. You kept fighting until somebody couldn't get up. Anybody else find anything? All right, let me just give you a few more things here, just for time's sake. Yeah, there are very few rules in ancient boxing, and including there was no rule against hitting an opponent when he was down. You know, today in boxing, if one guy gets knocked down, the ref moves the person who knocked him down back out of the way. No such thing in the ancient rules. Opponents were chosen randomly. The weight had nothing to do with it. Now, if you notice here, this is hanging on the wall, and those are called hamantes. And they would wear those instead of gloves. These were just leather thongs that they wrapped around their hands and wrists, but kept their fingers free. So you can see these are leather thongs wrapping around the wrist and the hand. The fingers would still be sticking out, so you can use your fingers. Now there was another form of fighting that was a combination of boxing and wrestling, called the Pankratian. And that's what this one is here, I believe. Punches were allowed, but they didn't wrap their hands. And I can't see that their hands are wrapped on that one, so that might be the one. Rules outlawed only biting and gouging an opponent's eyes, nose, or mouth with your fingernails. But you were allowed to kick your opponent in the belly. And it's almost more like cage fighting today. You know, there doesn't seem to be very many rules in that. Yeah, you guys ever watch any of that? No? So that's the boxing. Any questions? All right. Let's find out what events are in the pentathlon. How many do you think there are?
5.
5. Why?
Because it's a penta.
Because penta means 5, yeah. It wasn't because it says here, right?
No.
Because you knew from the penta.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, see what events there were in the pentathlon. I hope that you at home are doing this research too. It makes it a lot more fun if you're looking it up as well, not just waiting for us. And a lot less boring too. When you have 5 events written down, raise your hand. I'll know that you have finished. Okay, looks like we have almost everybody's found 5. How close are you, John? Amelia, how close are you? One more? Okay, you have them there, you just haven't written them down yet. Okay, so let's start. And you can tell me, because I've got the slides in a certain order, I'm gonna bring them up and you tell me whether you have it or not, all right? The first one is discus. How many of you have discus? All right, good. So we already know about that. We don't have to say anything more about it. The next one is the javelin. We would call today. What do we call it today? What we call. Okay, javelin. Anybody ever thrown a javelin? A friend of mine in college got hit by a javelin. The wind took it. The guy was throwing it, and my friend's back was to the thrower, and so it hit him right in the back. It just missed his spine by that much. So that hurt. That he recovered. So you got to be careful with these things, especially a javelin. It's a spear. All right. The next one is what is that? I forget. What do you have? Do you have anything on there that looks like that? Is that the long jump? Oh, okay. I'm not sure why it's holding a stick out there. Long jump. Everybody, you all know what that is. Anybody ever done the long jump? All right. And the next one is what? Wrestling. Yeah. Now in this wrestling, just like in modern wrestling, the athlete had to throw his opponent on the ground. And if he landed on his hip, shoulder, or back, that was considered a fair fall. And 3 throws were necessary to win a match. Biting was not allowed. However, grabbing one in private parts was. Breaking your opponent's fingernails was permitted. I'm sorry, fingers. Breaking your opponent's, yeah, if it would be girls, it'd be their fingernails. But guys, if you break the fingers, that's okay. So a lot of things that were allowed in the wrestling. All right, that's 4. Whoops. Okay, the jumping. Oh, I didn't have the running. I didn't have a picture of the running. So did you have running for your 5th one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sure how far it was. Anybody find out how far it was? All right. So that's the pentathlon. All right. Next, we give applause to those that were involved in equestrian events. I think. See if we can find. Let's have this half of the room look up equestrian events, and this half look up chariot racing. See what kind of horse events there were, and what kind of chariot races. So horse races and chariot races we're looking for. Okay, we found anything about horse races yet? Okay, we have anything about horse races? Mia?
Horse racing is something prestigious competition. It
Okay.
was like, it took place at the Hippodrome.
A hippodrome. Have you ever heard of a hippodrome? What is a hippodrome? It's a place for racing. What's it sound like?
Hippos.
Hippos. Yeah. What's a hippo?
An animal.
What kind of animal?
A big one.
That doesn't tell me much. What's a hippo? Hippo means horse. You're thinking hippopotamus, which literally means river horse. So a hippodrome is a place for racing horses. All right, so they race in hippodrome. Anything else? Emil, you have anything else?
Only the very rich could afford to race.
Okay, only the rich could afford horse racing, sort of like today. Yeah.
Like the owners of the horses didn't actually race them, but had someone to race for them.
Right.
And then there was like no seats for people to like watch it and had to like watch from the hills.
Oh, no seats. Okay. And if the horse won, did the jockey get the prize or did the horse get the prize? The horse got the prize, which the owner would probably take. All right, what about charioteering? What do you find about that, Matt?
I heard that it was one of the most dangerous events of the time.
Yeah, you can maybe imagine why. What else? Rick, you got something else?
Women were allowed to watch it.
Oh, okay, we'll get into that later. Anything else? Noah?
There were 10 chariots at a time, and they were pulled by 2, 4, or 6 horse teams.
Right. So either 2-horse team or 4-horse team or say 6?
Yeah.
Okay, here we have a picture of a couple of the different ones. So at the top here we see just horse racing, and then here are the chariots. This is a 4-horse chariot race. Anything else? Find out anything else? I don't know if you told us around the hippodrome the course was 12 laps. So it went around a number of times. So of course that would lend itself to accidents all this time going around. 9 miles is what it ends up being. And they had another race which was a cart race drawn by teams of 2 mules. Okay, next one is running. That was part of the pentathlon. Let's see if you can find out about running. How many different types of races have you found? Have you found more than one type? You don't look like you have found them, the types of races. Okay, what have you found? Let's just stop where we are here and find out, what did you find out about running? Matt, tell me something.
Well, there was distance running, and then there was sprints, and the sprints usually were 180 meters.
All right, so and that was, the sprint was called a stadion. That's the oldest event of the games, and they added the other ones. My information says they ran for one stade, which was 192 meters, or the length of the stadium. How many of you, have any of you run track? Okay, what have you run, Ella?
100 meter and 400 meter.
Okay, so how many meters is it around the track?
400.
Pardon me?
400.
400? Okay, so if we say that the sprint in this case was a little less than 200 meters, whether it's 180, 192, that would be the equivalent of about 2 times around, no, sorry, that'd be the equivalent of halfway around the track, right? So that would be the sprint. A little longer than a 100-yard dash. Pretty close to it, I guess. So that would be their sprint. All right. Then what other kind of race did you find? Anybody? Stephen? Okay, well, let's save that one. That's a real interesting one. Let me just tell you a couple other ones. There was also a 2-stage race, which would be 384 meters, which is almost 2 times around. So almost a 400. A little less than a 400, which is what you run right now. You run 400. And then there was a long distance run, which was anywhere from 7 to 24 stades, which would be 1,344 meters up to 4,608 meters. So if one state is, well, if 2 stades is almost all the way around, 7 stades would be about how many times? A little more than 3, I suppose. So that might be close to a mile. If it was maybe 8 or 9, close to a mile. Up to 24, that would be, well, I suppose almost 10, 12 miles. No, that would be less than that, 4 miles. So it varied. So it's difficult to say exactly how far it was. All right. So now those are, so there's sprints and there's long distance. Now there's another kind of race that Stephen found, which was 2 to 4 stades. So it was almost 400 meters to almost 800 meters. So it would be anywhere from a quarter mile to half a mile. But what was the particular interest in this one, Stephen? What was unusual about this race? Stephen, you said it before. They wore armor. So they had to put on armor while they're running this race. So you can tell that a lot of this was to get them ready for war, especially wearing armor while you're running, because they needed to build speed and stamina for when they're in the military. Now, their armor was not like in the Middle Ages. The armor they had was a helmet, a shield, and what are called greaves, which are those things you see on the front of the shin, front of the lower leg. That would weigh 50 to 60 pounds. Still a pretty good weight to carry around running that far. So Try to imagine what that kind of running would be like. All right, there's some other. I guess that yeah, that completes everything. Was there anything we didn't cover? Okay, let's look briefly at the requirements. Okay, there's several requirements for being in the Olympics, the ancient Olympics. Number one requirement, you have to be male. Number two requirement, maybe you noticed this in the pictures, you had to be naked. Number three requirement, you had to have a trainer who acted like a doctor if you got injured. Now, because they're competing naked, women were not allowed to watch the games under penalty of death. But there was one instance where there was a boy competing in a wrestling event, and you know how a boy's mother is. She so desperately wanted to see her son compete, and so she disguised herself as his trainer so she could be with him. When the excitement that followed his victory, her identity was discovered. Apparently they felt sorry for her, they did not punish her, but from that time on, in order to prevent that from happening again, they said all trainers also had to be naked, so nobody could pretend that they were a trainer. All right. Winning was the primary objective. As we said, in chariot and horse races, the owners of the horse received the prize. Now, the awards were not like today, where they have the medals. They look like they were made out of gold and bronze and silver. And initially they were, but they're not anymore. But the award for them was a laurel wreath put on their head. Yeah, a piece of vegetation. That was their award for winning. They'd also get a vase with a picture of their event, like we saw in the pictures on the screen. Sometimes a champion was given slaves or a horse. And I've read that in some cities, if you were there, you're representing your city, that some cities, if you were the champion, would actually knock a hole in the city wall and make a new gate for you to come through to honor you as being a champion. Now, in the later years of the Olympics, boys' events were added. That would be ages 12 to 18. And still later on, girls' events were also added. Then the Olympic Games were put out of commission when Christianity became dominant in the Roman world. The first modern games were held in 1896. And what city do you suppose they chose to hold the first modern Olympic Games? Athens. Yes. I saw a very interesting documentary film. It was made like a movie about the first Olympics and the Americans' efforts to get into it. And I wish I could remember the name of it. I don't know what to look under. But it showed how they didn't know how to do some of the events, because they weren't the things that people did in the modern world. So the only thing they had to go by were the statues, pictures of statues. So they saw a guy with a discus, and they kind of figured out what he was doing. And so some of these different events, they had to just kind of guess at what they were supposed to do. But according to this movie, when the athletes were getting ready to go to the Olympics, they were holding some fundraising demonstrations. Where they would go through some of the events, and the people that would be watching, and they would donate, because the government didn't pay for them to go. They had to raise money to get to Athens. Well, the first time they had one of these, all they knew about the Olympics was what they had read and looked at pictures. And so the coach told them to go into this little house changing area to change, and then come out and demonstrate for the people the different events. Well, not knowing any better, they all came out buck naked. And the coach said, no, you don't have to compete that way. Just because they did, we don't have to. Go put some shorts on or whatever. So it's kind of a funny moment. The American team didn't get there at the beginning of the Olympics. They arrived late because they had to get to Europe by ship and then take a train down through France in order to get to Athens, and it was quite an adventure, but very interesting to see how that developed. Okay, do you have any questions about the ancient Olympic Games? You can see that most of the events we still do today, but we've added a lot more, right? And sometimes they add an event, they take away an event. I think baseball was an event for a while, then they took it away. So the event doesn't seem real popular, they seem to do away with it. But they keep adding, in recent years they've added skateboarding and different skiing, X game type stuff, skiing, snowboarding, things like that, all kinds of things. Any questions? All right, your assignment for Monday is to read and take notes on pages 53 to 56. Do the section review questions on page 56, incomplete sentences. Got a few minutes to at least look it over and get started.